thanks for joining us today for this first of the Meet the Expert. Pre-treatment, what is it?
Well, pre-treatment is, in our world, the preparation for powder coating. We're taking the aluminium or the galvanised steel from its delivered state, which might be a little bit greasy, it might have contaminants on it, and we're removing all of those ready for powder coating. That's half of the job, is to clean it. The other half is to protect it from corrosion, which is a conversion process, which is called titanium zirconium, or our other one for galvanised is called silane. That process essentially seals the metal from corrosion and promotes the adhesion. Underlying all that, there's also an etching stage which micro etches the surface, which if you could think of it as the powder grabbing on and holding onto the aluminium or the galvanised steel. It doesn't seem like a lot of etching, but it really does, down at a microscopic scale, it really makes a huge difference to what comes later on in the process.
Pre-treatment sounds pretty chemically. How environmentally friendly actually is it?
It is a chemically process, you're right, and also a lot of water rinses. It is very environmentally friendly. This supersedes chrome conversion systems, which was Chrome 6, as I know we've talked about in the past, which is extremely environmentally unfriendly and will eventually be banned. Titanium zirconium does not have the same environmental impact on either the processing in terms of health and safety, nor in terms of post-processing in terms of disposal. The local water company, Anglian Water, they're extremely happy that we've converted this, because that vastly reduces the impact of our process on the environment, and essentially now what we get rid of is clean water.
Seems to me that pre-treatment's really important. What happens if you don't do it?
There's two things that will happen. One, you won't be etching it, so you won't be creating that adhesive surface. The second thing is you won't be converting the surface to reduce the corrosion. So you'll powder coat and you'll have what looks like a nice finish, but there'll be no stopping of corrosion should it be cut, and once that happens there'll be nothing to stop the powder just literally peeling off, and so it'll be a wholesale disaster. You might not notice it for a month, 2 months, possibly even a year, but once that gets breached, the powder will literally come off in sheets. What you have to remember with powder coating, it is not waterproof, it is porous, so water can get through, and unless you've got that pre-treatment that we've talked about, then the water will get through, it cause like a little battery cell and start to corrode the whole panel.
After pre-treatment, what would be the next step? Do you just dry it?
Yeah, they're dried, obviously, because when we're powder coating, we want to powder coat onto a clean, dry surface.
So after the panels have come out the dryer, they're obviously about to be powder coated. What is powder coating?
After pre-treatment, it is hung on the bars and then dried, and then those bars then continue round into the powder coating booth.
How exactly is the powder applied to the substrate?
Well, the first thing to realise is that powder coating, strange enough, is a powder. It feels like flour. So if you can imagine that, it's air, but you can't literally throw flour at a panel. It'll be very lumpy. So it is fluidised and becomes very fine and full of air, and that's passed over an electrical wire, effectively, which imparts a static electrical charge on it. So then that's all done through a gun. It looks like a gun, and when you pull it, the powder goes over the static tip, out through the gun, is propelled, and propelled towards the material. This is all done inside an evacuated booth. Basically, the booth is sucking the powder all the time, so there's nothing gets out in, we don't fill the factory with powder. As it's travelling across between the gun and the metal is earthed and the powder is positively charged, and that static electricity or that static charge attracts the powder to the metal. It's a bit like, and if you remember using a comb, when you combed your hair and on a summer's day and then put the hair against the comb, your hair would rise up and stick, and it's exactly that, but on an industrial scale. So the powder sticks, and what it does, it forms a very even film over the metal. So that's another really great thing about the way that powder is attracted to metal. It's very even and very consistent. and that static electricity holds it long enough to take it on to the next curing stage.
Which metals or other products can we powder coat?
In theory, you can powder coat anything that will withstand 200 degrees centigrade for 10 minutes in an oven. In theory, you can powder coat wood. In fact, MDF can be powder coated, but it has to be specially prepared for that electrostatic attraction. So it has to have some water content in it, basically. But if you're sticking to metals, aluminium in all its forms, so cast, machined, extruded, rolled, and folded, anything like that. Mild steel can be done very successfully, but usually for internal purposes if it's just mild steel. And then externally, obviously galvanised steel, that's zinc coated steel, for external architectural purposes. You can powder coat brass and chrome plating and that type of thing as well. You can also do aluminium die castings. They take different types of pre-treatments, some different coating methods, but essentially, if it can withstand those temperatures, it can be powder coated.
I get asked this a lot. Can we powder coat stainless steel?
The answer to that is yes, but stainless steel by its very nature is chemically resistant. That's why it's developed. So the pre-treatment chemicals won't really have a massive effect other than cleaning it. Obviously it will still clean it. But stainless steel really needs to be pre-treated mechanically as well, and that's using a non-ferrous blasting media. That effectively etches the surface and it gives it a really good adhesion. We've coated very successfully on stainless for many years, but you have to make sure that it's extremely clean and it is well bead blasted, not something with a non-metallic media for blasting it. We powder coated for Fairline boats and many stainless steel handrails, and pretty successfully, but it's not something to do half-heartedly. A lot of people want stainless because they think it's corrosion resistant. Yes, it is, but that's the stainless. If it's not pre-treated correctly, the powder will just fall off. It's the top and bottom of it.
What finishes and colours are available to us in the architectural sector?
If you and I were sat in here 25 years ago, we'd have said, well, there's 244 colours in the RAL Classic range, and that would have been a very short conversation. As you know now, we can sit here together for days looking at different colours, different textures, different gloss levels, full of metallic, no metallic, different micas. It literally is now a world where if you can imagine it, you can get it in powder. There's no real limit anymore in terms of what you can do. Obviously there's budgetary constraints and there are a few physical constraints. Chemistry does have to work. But essentially, if you can pick a colour, it can be done in powder.
How does powder coating stand up against UV and corrosion?
Again, this has changed over the years. The first job that was ever done in the UK was in 1974, and that's still going strong. It has faded a bit. It was a red colour, and so it has faded, but it's faded very evenly. So essentially, you don't notice patches of different colours. It's an even fade. As time has gone on, powders have become better and better, especially at UV or ultraviolet light resistance. The corrosion resistance, that ability to protect the metal from corrosion has stayed roughly the same. There's, the main difference now when you order higher quality powders is in its UV, ultraviolet light resistance, and its colour retention, colour and gloss retention. Those, yes, there is significant differences, but the main thing really is knowing where and when to apply those. In the UK, what I call a Qualicoat Class 2 product is specified more and more, but we don't have a huge amount of UV issues in the UK, at least not at the moment. But if you were to go south of Paris, when you're getting more towards Mediterranean or equator, then you'll be looking at higher UV resistant products. And they're now just getting into Qualicoat Class 3, which improves the UV even more. And just in case this goes worldwide, this video, you never know. You're talking about Armour for America, Dubai MA 3, 4 and 5. They roughly equate to Qualicoat Class 1, 2 and 3, and that is being used a lot more across the world now as the standards which are being referred to.
How efficient actually is powder coating when it comes to ecology and the environment?
Okay, well, if you take the broad assumption that the less you use, the more efficient, the better it is for the environment, powder coating is extremely good. If you took a typical box of 20 kilos and continually sprayed with it, you'd probably end up with half a kilo left at the end of the day that couldn't be used. That can then be reused, say, in fillers for road building materials, etc. So, because it's an inert product, it doesn't give off any gases or have any solvents in it at all. So it can be essentially 100% used, but maybe not all within the powder coating plant. So the way that we get that efficiency is by having a consistent recycling process. So as we're spraying towards the metal, not all of it will fall on the metal, and that misses will be sucked through the system again, classified or regraded, and the little grains that are of the right size will go back in with the virgin powder and get resprayed until eventually you end up with half kilo bits that never made the grade. And that's a really environmentally friendly way of coating in comparison to, say, wet paints. If you took a litre of wet paint, you might only have 30% of that wet paint ends up on the material. The rest, to be honest, is all carrier. It's all solvents which will just disappear into the air, and we all know what those solvents will do to the air. So that is a really environmentally friendly way of actually coating by using powder coating. And if you're going back in the processes, there's no solvents anywhere within powder coating. In terms of recycling metal, which is also very important, so you're recycling the aluminium that the coating is on, if you've got coated aluminium, it does not affect the recycling process of aluminium. So if you've got coated product, you can basically recycle it as you would with an uncoated product. Essentially, the coating just burns off.
Hot topic at the moment. Where does powder coating sit when it comes to fire rating?
This is a hot topic, dare I say. There is, in the industry, a lot of confusion about what is and isn't fire rated and where things can be used. But there is a lot of information out there that needs to be disseminated. So the first thing I really would have to say is it pays to read around the subject. Essentially, if you're using a reputable powder manufacturer and or powder coater who's applying powders for the architectural industry, those powders will be fire rated to A2 rating. That is allowed, explicitly allowed within approved document B in the building regulations. So powder coating can be used on any structure, irrespective of the height of the structure, below or above 18 metres, which is the threshold that a lot of people talk about. Powder coating is usable in that situation, and is approved. It's end of story, really. But there's a lot of misinformation going around about how whether powder coating can be used, but I can quite honestly say that Powder Tech have researched a lot into this and are publishing material about it to say that powder coating on architectural applications is fine.
What are the innovations for the coming years that we can look forward to for powders and the technologies?
I think coming up in the next 5 years, we'll be moving more to Qualicoat Class 3 products. Currently, they're seriously expensive and almost prohibitively expensive. I think we'll be seeing a lot more things like these that around, which is giving more of a variance to the eye, a much more interesting product. In terms of coating technology, I think we'll probably be looking more towards robotics. Powdertech have already looked at robotics, but unfortunately we don't think it's advanced enough for us at the moment. Financially it's almost affordable, but it won't deliver the benefits that we would like in terms of consistency. And the other thing that will be coming up to affect the whole industry, I think, is the issue of the chrome-free technology. Chrome pre-treatments will have to go, and a lot of people will have to put their hand in the pocket and invest, otherwise they won't exist. So and I think that environmental side of things will play into powder coating's hands a little bit, because genuinely, properly done, as you can see, a high yield of powder to what you put on the metal is the right way forward.
I've heard a whisper about powders being made out of plastic bottles. What do you know about that?
Well, I know it's probably not ground up plastic bottles that you've heard about. What you've probably been hearing about is post-manufacture pre-consumer waste. So it's very clean material that probably can be reused and remelted. I think once it gets into the plastic bottle stage, it might be a little bit late for that. But essentially it's taking what would be a waste product and reusing it in powder coating. I know this has been trialled. I think it's pretty successful. I think from our point of view, there's going to be that we've got to overcome a bit of a scepticism about how good it will be, and also I think there's going to be a lot of trials done to make sure that it is genuinely as robust in use. Because as we've talked about earlier, talking about fire, if you mention plastics and mention fire, they're not two words that people like to hear in the same sentence. And also with the ultraviolet light protection, we've got to do a lot of testing on that to see whether that really is as good with the recycled plastics as it is with the current virgin sort of polyesters. But essentially, yeah, it's a good news story, but I don't see that coming into mainstream use for probably 2-3 years. There's a lot of work. You've got to get a product like that through the whole of the specification system, and as you know, that can be quite a long tunnel. But yeah, I think theoretically it's here to stay.
Having been around the plant with you today, you've got some really impressive kit out there. What are the investments you're making for the future, do you think?
Well, we have a rolling investment programme, because obviously things wear out and technology improves and legislation changes. So the booths out there are all very modern. The pre-treatment system is just over 3 years old now, and that was an investment of over £600,000. It was completely new, right from everything that you can see was replaced. The strip shop which you saw, which is an extremely valuable piece of kit in terms of keeping production going, that's a further £150,000 in investment. But we take a very proactive view about investment. It's about making sure that what we're offering to the customer is based on the latest technology. And of course, myself and Giles, we make our business to understand what is happening in the industry in terms of technology, in terms of process control, the improvements in product. And also, as we do work together on what colours are up and coming. And as you can see with the colours that we have around us now, we're really interested in making sure that we deliver a modern, high quality product, and that can only come by consistent investment. So it really pays to when you're speaking to a powder coater to understand, have you invested in chrome-free technology? If the answer's no, then you should maybe taking a step backwards, and saying let's find somebody who is, because that is an environmental issue, probably the biggest one in the industry, and spending that money has, for us, it gives us peace of mind, and it's also as you know, because it's all CNC, computer controlled, it's also a better process than we ever had before.
Thanks for being our first guest on Meet the Expert.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.